here out of the med school, and I met Rob at the last meeting that we had here.
Welcome everyone, and this is Melba Yildiz. I am reporting from my office. I'll be joining the conference room shortly. Welcome to SpeedTech Fall 2018, and this is such an honor and privilege to be among all these students, alumni, colleagues, friends, and international global scholars, and most importantly, New York State's Teacher of the Year of 2019 with us. So welcome, and this session is recorded and it will be aired on YouTube. As soon as it's online, I will also share the link with you. And for being here today, if you are interested in CTL hours, we will also send you hours to put it in your portfolio. Just let us know, in addition to the certification of attendance. Thank you again, and I'll see you shortly in the other room. And with that, I would like to give the microphone to our Teacher of the Year, and I am such honored to be in his presentation, his keynote speak, in a conference in Saratoga Springs last month, and he agreed to come in person, in fact. However, he's coming back to our campus on Monday morning, so for those of you who would like to meet him in person, he will be in campus. But today I said, don't make it twice, come through Zoom. So here he is, and I'm running on the hallway while you're introducing yourself. Thank you.
All righty, cool. Thank you, Melba, and thank you all for having me. I am so honored to be part of this conversation today with you all. Like Melba said, I met in Saratoga last month. She has just been a joy to get to know, a lot of good conversations. My name is Al-Hassan Suso, so I'm gonna share a slide with you all that will share my background and who I am, and then what I'm gonna speak about the next 5 minutes. So give me a second, let me do that. Perfect. Oh, what happened here? All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
I can.
Wonderful.
All right.
You can?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today in the next 5 minutes is how do we empower students to live meaningful lives through self-actualization? So a quick background, my name is Al-Hassan Suso. I teach social studies and personal development at the International Community High School in the South Bronx, and I've been teaching there for the past 7 years. I'm also an author. I am originally from the Gambia in West Africa, and I came to the US when I was 16 years old. So when I turned 32, at that point, I have lived 16 years in the Gambia and 16 years in the US. So I thought that would be a good time to reflect on my life journey to see, comparing Gambia and the US. So I wrote a memoir documenting my American journey. And I've been blessed to be now selected this year as the 2019 New York State Teacher of the Year. And last year, I was also honored to be selected for 2018 Social Emotional Innovation Award for Teachers and Vaki Foundation Top 50 Outstanding Educators in the world 2016. So that's a quick background on me, so we could get into what I am going to be talking about. So what I want to share with you today is how do we empower our students to find meaning in their lives? This is a data from the CDC. They keep track of students in schools every 2 years. And from 2009 until 2017, the trend has been increasing in terms of how students are feeling sad or depressed while they're in school. And as a teacher, that is something that's troubling to me, because a lot of our students spend more time in school than they actually do at home. Therefore, we need to ensure that we are creating an environment that is conducive both for their learning, but also for their personal well-being. So therefore, one of the ways to think about this process is how can we help students to find meaning? I love this from Nietzsche. It is to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in our suffering. I think this is something that a lot of teenagers, because those are the ones I deal with, are lacking a lot. How do they make sense of whatever challenges that they might be going through? I believe it's all a matter of perspective, because if they are able to understand that they are not alone in their struggles, then they will be able to come up with empowering meaning, which will allow them to be able to live meaningful lives. And in that process, their academic progress will certainly be more effective and increase as well. And the reason I said that is because there was a study done by Loyola University in 2012. What they have done is that they looked at schools with strong social emotional learning curriculum. And what they have found was that schools that have strong social emotional learning curriculum, their students tend to outperform their counterparts by 11 points on their standardized exams. And I think that's extremely crucial because a lot of schools today are focused a lot on how to increase standardized exam scores. But I think it's the reverse. Our focus needs to be on how do we empower our students to be able to live effective lives, because if they do, then automatically their academic will follow. So I always tell my colleagues that when students' social and emotional lives develop, their academic lives will fall in place. And not only based on this research, but also based on my own personal experience, I started teaching at this school in 2012. And at that year, our graduation rate was 31%. And when I became a 12th grade teacher, I started to teach what I call personal development course. And it's a program that starts an hour before school. And our students obviously are notorious for being late first period. So everybody thought this was definitely not gonna work because students who would not come on time, what makes you think they will come an hour before? Well, I tried it anyway, and it worked out. The first year, 29 students enrolled in the program, and 100% of them graduated, and 97% of them went on to college. The second year, the program increased from 29 to 40 students, and the same number was through the following year. 100% graduated, and 97% went on to college. And this was my third year of doing it, which was last year, the class of 2018. We went from 40 to 60 students. So I teach 12th grade. Our entire cohort last year was 89, and 60 out of the 89 were showing up an hour before school starts to be able to be in the personal development class. And last year also, 100% of all the students who took the class graduated, and last year 96% of them went to college. And this demonstrates that, well, if students are able to find meaning in what they are learning, you don't have to force them to come to school, because this is a volunteer class in which they decide to show up. And 60 students out of 89 decided to show up an hour early, twice a week. And because of that, our attendance rate significantly increased. And last year, our graduation rate was 81%. So we went from 31% in 2012 to 81% last year. And the program that I started at my school now has been taken and expanded, and it's now a 4-year scope and sequence for social and emotional development of our students. And then in that process, our students are able to succeed not only academically, but also in their personal lives. And I hope we can expand this idea across our state and hopefully across around the country, so that students are able to find joy while they are learning in schools. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I know it's 5 minutes, so sorry if I went really quickly, but I just want to be respectful of time. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I know you have to go for, and now that you're a keynote speaker everywhere, you need to go to the conference, but hope you will have a chance to stay a little bit longer. And maybe some of us have questions like, how do you become a teacher of the year? Like, that's my question. You must have been nominated by students or for your peers or somebody.
Yeah.
You came to your
Okay, it's more like almost 6 months to a 6 to 8 month process. So it's, for me, it started with one of my colleagues nominated me for the Teacher of the Year. She was my mentor when I started working here, and then that's the application process for New York State. You get nominated by somebody, and then your principal has to approve, and then your superintendent also has to approve, as well as your union, your local union president. So all of them have to evaluate your portfolio and give them their stamp of approval before you can apply. And then when you apply, then it's letters of recommendations from your principal, your colleague, your students, and community members to determine what kind of an individual you are, not only to be an effective educator, but to also be a contributing member of the community. And that's step one in New York State. Then once you submit that application, then they will evaluate all the candidates, and then they will select a small group from that pool and take them to the next step, which is to write a series of essays about different topics. This year, the topics were defining lesson, contribution to the community, initiative in your school, and a trend in education. So those are the 4 essays that we had to write this year. So once we wrote those essays, we submitted. 2 months later, they select 5 individuals from the list, and then they will come to your school for a site visit to determine, everything that's been said in your application is accurate, but to also see you in action. So they did that, and then once that process is done, and the last stage of the process is to go for an interview in Albany with selection committee members. And out of those 5 individuals, then one of them become the Teacher of the Year based on the committee's decision.
I see, because I saw clip from a newspaper article. It had other teachers in the background.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you now.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, a little bit better. Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much. So it's not an easy process either. So you have to do other series of accomplishments along the way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right. Anyone?
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Any questions anybody would like to ask?
What sparked the personal development?
My second year of teaching, I discovered that only 28% of our students were going to college, and out of that, 50% would drop out within their first year. So that means only 14% of our students were making it past the first year of college. And the school I teach at are all recently arrived immigrants. And as an immigrant myself, I know the detriment of that because I have taken 6 years after high school, not going to college. So the path that they are taking without a college education, I know that will intergenerational poverty. So that's why I approached my principal and asked her, what can we do about this? And she said, well, that's what we are all thinking about, but as of now, we haven't found a solution yet. So I went on a quest on the idea of putting the elements of success together, and I then put together a 5-step process, starting with developing the right attitude and mindset, setting a clear goal and visions for your life, developing communication skills, leadership, and financial management. Because at the time, my goal was not necessarily for everybody to go to college, but even if they don't go to college, if they have a clear path of what they want to do in life, I think that would be helpful. And that was the genesis of the personal development program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Because I know you have to rush now, but we don't know how the traffic will be for your next session. But
All right, cool.
it's
Thank you very much. Thank you.
all right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
And I'm so grateful because I was in a conference and I just attended and they gave a little reception and I had a chance to meet them in person. And stories, of course, you can't tell because of the 45-minute keynote. It's amazing coming from losing his relatives along the way. He himself has some kind of eyesight issue. There's a lot of challenges. Being here with his, I guess, background also inspired someone. The students, one of them said, "You're not a real Muslim." It was very interesting. I always felt that way growing up in Turkey. Who is the real Muslim? Like that, I don't see myself as a real Muslim. But when he explained his reasoning and his questioning, it's very eye-opening as a Muslim myself. So I learned so much from him as a teacher in the school district with all the challenges, not just coming from overseas, but living as an immigrant overseas. All right, thank you so much. I would like to now take our next keynote on to open up her screen. It's my lifelong mentor, Irene Starr. Irene, are you still there? Would you like to?
I am.
All right.
Okay, if I move this, now can you see me?
No.
Not yet. You're going to hit the share screen.
The share thing disappeared.
It's
It
probably,
was here.
it's probably at the bottom. You want to go?
Let's see here.
Maybe you can go sign out.
Okay, wait a minute. Share, I see it. Okay, and then I've got to pick this. Now can you see me?
Yes, yes. Oh, man.
Yes.
Hi, Irene. Okay, so you have a rectangle around you. Somehow your system wants to make sure. Yeah.
So you want me to start now?
Yes, please. You can.
Okay. I also have an immigrant connection. My parents came from Germany just before World War II. My early career was in physics, and I moved into tech and tech management along the way. After retirement, we returned to our hometown of Greater Kansas City 5 years ago, as our only grandchild lives here, along with other family. One of my current interests is working with older people who say, "Why would I want a computer?" And I developed a workshop that I give at senior centers and related places called the Internet for the Technically Terrified. I begin by telling people the good news that the internet is a huge library with information that is usually easy to find and accessible from various devices. Also that public computers are usually free at libraries and senior centers, so you don't have to own one. Then I mention the lesser news, avoid the too good to be true, as well as medical and other advice from unknown sources. To make computer vocabulary easier to remember, I compare it to the automobile with the comment, "No need to remember or understand these, just use it." Some hardware examples. The monitor screen or window is like the windshield of a car. The computer has an engine, like a car has an engine. You can ignore them both as long as they're working. The operating system. Windows 10 versus Apple, sort of like electric versus gas stoves. So I hope that by making these familiar, that it reduces anxiety. I also introduced some vocabulary such as internet, Wi-Fi, browser, search engine. I mentioned that the start of a web address is usually HTTPS : etc. And that endings such as edu or org are for schools or nonprofits, also etc. After showing how to open browsers and Google, I have a list of words for people to practice looking up on their computers in our lab. A few examples. Weather is a word that's too general, so you have to add a zip code. You could do state maps or city maps or your own address. For entertainment, I suggest looking up crosswords and jigsaw puzzles. Those are also good for practicing the use of a mouse. And if you can't just look up the word music, you need to know an artist or a genre or a title. They could look up language lessons, like learn French, or they could look up translations. You can't just have the word recipe, and beans is too general, but you could say green beans or lima beans. And then I tell them that social media and email are separate workshops that we can't cover in one lesson. I also suggest that until one has more experience, don't click on ads, products for sale, registration, membership, pop-ups, etc. If one decides to use the internet for shopping or other payments at some point, a small credit card with a low limit is useful to avoid risk to one's main card. And 2 email accounts can be useful, one for family, friends, and important communication, another for everything else. I emphasize caution on health topics, pointing out that reliable sites tend to belong to federal, state, or medical school organizations, and they should never be used for self-diagnosis or to replace a medical visit. Some miscellaneous tips in no particular order. My favorite is undo and redo, which is Control-Z or Control-Y. And then there's the copy, cut, paste, which I'm sure you all know. In a search, I tell people to type general terms and specific topics, and that the uppercase is usually not necessary. In general, it's like driving. You need to read the screen, but ignore what's irrelevant. Just like in driving, you ignore the scenery and watch the road. In a search, typos are often ignored. Quotes are important. For example, if you look up the title, Internet for the Technically Terrified, you get 1 result if it's in quotes. If it's not in quotes, you get over 1 million results. So New York City, you'd want to have it in quotes because it's 3 words. And then I tell them that, especially because it's older people usually, that Control+ enlarges the text for easier reading on the internet, and Control- does the opposite. I point out that left clicks open a link, right clicks get a menu of choices. I say if 1 left click doesn't open it, try 2 quick clicks. For sites ending in .com, one can press the Control key, then enter, instead of typing it all out after you put in just the main word. Often you don't need all the stuff before the main word, the domain name. The vocabulary on the first page of a general search can sometimes help one think of more specific terms. And I mentioned that once they do get email, a disadvantage of using a cable company's email is if one moves, one may lose the address if the company doesn't serve the new area. And thank you for inviting me to join this.
Thank you. I cannot thank you enough as a mentor for life. She is always behind her computer. As if my mother, before she died 4.5 years ago, always said, "Is Irene waiting for you to ask questions?" But she's always there for me. If I need a recommendation, it's ready within an hour. So she's a lifetime mentor. She actually has a website on keyboard that made the only search available at one time. That I was part of the initial work at when I was at UMass with her. So I had the privilege working with her and having her guest for so many times. I was a graduate student still traveling back and forth to UMass, and she opened her mansion. She gave me her key. So I had the privilege really being her student, her colleague, her guest, and her, I'm hoping, her friend for life. Thank you so much, Irene. And you also humble us, right? These are very simple looking tools. We forget that another generation may find it difficult. And one other thing I actually would like to add, for those of you who never used the algorithm, because knowing the algorithm of the search engine that you use, let me see if I can share a screen with you. You just reminded me a very simple algorithm that most of us don't use much. Oh, you need to unshare, Irene, so I can share.
I can't hear you.
Can you unshare your screen, please?
What?
Your screen. Would you please unshare? Stop sharing.
Unshare your screen.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So let's say you're Google searching and you need a topic to search. Space. Okay. So it's very, if we use space, you're going to get into part. And you also mentioned the quotation, which is really important. It says spaceship, right? Something more you need to add. But the only thing I want to show you here within seconds is minusing. Have you ever known just saying minus come gets you the if of course they're not paid.
Wow, look at how many results.
So this many results come in. But if you say to the computer, now I want exactly plus K12.NewYork.US. I want the domain that K12 domain. So if you put a plus, what it does is it searches only space within those domains. So look what happens. You see?
Wow.
So this is okay. Sorry. If they have something to do with space with this, it just comes to this.
So great.
Yeah, so library space. So they use the space as a library. So it's a very simple algorithm, but we forget. If you know what AC stands for in the internet domain name. No. So if you're looking for, it's not air conditioning, as you know. If you say AC, it's actually academic in places like United Kingdom. So it gets you, of course, these are paid, so this is can't really get rid of the ones. And maybe there's no AC in this case. That could be the reason. But if I say AC.UK, so University of Glasgow, showed up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So anyway, that was my 2 cents for addition to Irene's talk. All right, now my new gem. I think we need to set you up for the computer. Do you have anything, or do you want? How do you? So our next presenter. I want to look closer to the screen so everyone could hear you clearly. Is a colleague I met in EdCamp, and I would like to have EdCamp at NYIT. So maybe we can combine EdCamp SpeedTech. So they allow you to do that. So this is a nationwide organization. I guess it could be even international. The only thing you need is to show up. So one day you say, we're going to have Saturday and all day professional development. And since we also are CPLE our people, we can actually, whoever comes in, they require, they can also get an hour's credited for their professional development. We can give them certificates, we can give them food, gifts, whatever. Also reach out to the community and see if we can get some donations. We can invite, in this case, I had a table with NYIT table. With big family. It's so much fun to see our alumni come in. Okay, from there, and I want a good time. You meet your past alumni and then invite them to be the future ones. So it was a good time for me. And then I found the gold mine. So please take it over. She has so much to say. I'm going to give her 6 minutes.
No, okay, so my passion is the world. I think global connections are extremely important. And I've done a great deal of travel and living overseas, mostly in the Middle East. And I thought the best way to share my passion for my world is to share something I've written about experiences overseas. So the first one, very briefly, is called Morocco. I went to Morocco to study, and I lived with a Moroccan family, and this is what I wrote while I was there. Morocco, a second time. Walking to and from school, I reflect upon the serenity I feel. The rhythm of daily life is soothing. In the hour before sunrise, the call to prayer lulls me from sleep. My eyes are closed, and there's a smile on my face. The resident rooster imitates the muezzin badly. 3 weeks of listening, there is still no improvement. My senses are acute. Lack of conveniences prods them to life. A shower, now a deeply treasured ritual. Drinking water, no mere automatic response to thirst, but a savored, erotic experience. Home in the heat of the day, a refuge. A deep, cool chamber, an impenetrable facade. All this activity faces inward, welcomes and calms the exhausted self. I am home. The next one I had was going to the hammam, which is the public bath. And they had all kinds of stories told to us before I went to Morocco about going to such a place. And this was my experience there. Stepping into the hammam transports me back to a time I can only imagine. This is the woman's place, a kind of ownership of space. The walls echo with it. It is more than a bathing place. Here, women tend each other. The exchange of coin for service is incidental to the act of tending. Here I am a child again, as an old lady with a misshapen body, wearing bikini underwear, gently prods and pushes until I am prone on the hammam floor. My head in her lap, her breasts hanging over my body, swinging to and fro as she rubs and scrubs. My skin sings with vibration until it glows. I know it is glowing, as are the other women's bodies, because our bodies provide the only light in this dark and ancient place. This place with its tiled walls and floors and chambers that echo with the murmur of voices, the splashing of water, the sighs of pleasure, the whisper of silence. Wow. And finally, this one gets me. So, I call it an encounter. In Citadel Village, Middle East, Africa, India, I experienced the lives of women. I sat with them, held children, ate their food, slept in the beds, clasped them in farewell, never have spoken a word. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. That was thank you. Poems always, say more than this, so I think it's the perfect choice, right? Instead of just showing another slide and trying to rush and reading that poem. Wow, very impressed. And the dissertation is about if anyone interested in literature, children's literature, global,
Middle East and Arab world in the literature.
I'm fascinated. I want to read all the books. I'm in her room, in her Yes. All right. Now I would like to introduce the rest of us to each other. And whoever needs to rush, I think I know Iram has to go to sleep. So we will put ourselves in the order in which we're rushing to get out of there. So let's go around the world and around the table, around the Zoom to introduce ourselves. My name is Magda Yildiz, and I have the honor of coordinating SpeedTech for the last 4 semesters. I hope this will continue to grow and continue to reach out to the rest of the unknown territories. Okay.
I'm Diane Williams. I run the Science Technology Entry Program here at the medical school.
I'm Austin Meadows. I work with Diane. I'm the STEP coordinator. Hi, my name is Stephen Kalix. I work for NYT for Office of Student Engagement. I'm the director. I do marketing.
I'm Dr. Roberta Robinson. I'm currently working on teacher work for global education in health schools.
My name is Melissa Bettini.
All right, Iram, take it over.
Greeting Turkey. Oops, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very glad to be here and have a chance to talk about the popular application that Turkish K2 teachers use for second language learning and teaching, and have a chance to talk about my favorite.
Iram, just
Can you hear me? Wait a minute.
introducing ourselves first, then.
Yes, I will. Yeah. Okay. Then yes, I will present my favorite tool that I use in the EFL classroom setting. But I want to introduce myself first, like briefly. So it's my senior year of a college, and I'm a practice teacher and doing my internship in one of the best private schools in Turkey. And I also give English lessons for 4th graders in a state school voluntarily. And I strongly believe that we need to integrate technology into our classroom settings. And I've always appreciated the appropriate technological tools for enhancing second language teaching and learning. So today I will show 2 applications for you. So can I share my screen right now?
Let me just introduce the rest of the panelists. On the Zoom, and then we will get back to you as well.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And believe it or not, the reason I know Iram and why she's staying tonight is because my brother is her mentee, and my brother went to the same school in Turkey after me, and it's Boğaziçi University. It's one of the best known international schools in Turkey. It's like Harvard in Turkey. Everyone wants to go to Boğaziçi. So I had the privilege being there, my brother, and now my brother is going back to the community and mentoring people like Iram. And then my brother is like, no, I don't have that skill. And introduce Iram to me. So, yeah, you need to come to SpeedTech. So that's how we end up having her today. Okay, Rob. Our student for NYIT expert student of life.
Thank you for having me, Professor. Best way to put it is I graduated from NYT in 1994 with a BPS in interdisciplinary studies. Then I got a MS in Human Resources Management, Labor Relations in 1998. Then I started the Instructional Ontology program for Trainers Track in 1999. And there was a military interruption. I tried to return back in 96 in the fall, which was interrupted again. I did a total of 7 tours.
Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of people.
Right. I graduated just recently in May with the assistance of Professor Yildiz in Instructional Technology Trainers Track. Now I'm in my last semester of the Environmental Technology and Sustainability program. And I'm also will be attaining the advanced certificate in STEM with the assistance of Dr. Yildiz as well.
So as you can see, we never going to leave us. So the program that you would like to introduce Rob, he will join you. So thank you, Rob, for being not just a student, but really a wonderful colleague and a scholar, and now that we started working in this multimedia class, he's also a multimedia designer. So I can't wait to learn more from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Donald is another student of ours who's been in the system for so long, but this is it. This is the last semester.
Yeah, well, I'm taking the scenic route to graduation on this degree. I'm actually a full-time instructor at Orange County Community College in Middletown, New York, where I teach marketing and entrepreneurship. And I have an MBA from Marist, and my undergrad was in marketing from RIT. And I've been working on this particular degree for about 10 years on and off.
I think you definitely deserve some kind of a prize. Just name it. I'll send it over.
Yeah.
He's a mother's person. I'm sure he's just going to ask for a Prius or something. My brother already gave my son $200 last summer and says, look, I'm going to get very old in the future. The only thing I want in return is $200 for now. In the future, a Prius. That's all I need. So yeah, that's one wishes will be true one day. All right, Ryan, our librarian of the year. Is that an award for librarianship?
I would assume so. I think there's there are BOCES and
If we should create one, let me know if I can nominate you. He's a librarian colleague who is now volunteering to share his expertise with us. So take it over.
Oh, yeah. So hi, I'm Brian Paulson. This is my final semester. I'm doing 695. I am the librarian at New Rochelle High School. I'm also a computer science teacher. Apologize quick to Rob for not realizing that my mute had turned off. I think I interrupted him a bit. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm the high school librarian at New Rochelle High School. This is my 7th year. I'm also a certified social studies teacher and photographer, videographer. I'm really into maker spaces, and I run the robotics program at our high school too. So I have a lot going on, and I don't sleep much.
Very good.
So much, but
yeah.
Thank you for inspiring your students and your professors here at NYIT and doing all this wonderful work. All right, who's in a rush?
Me, I am.
Okay, Ryan, then go first.
Okay, so I actually am not going to be presenting about libraries today. I mean, though most of my practicum experience this semester has been on using Follow Destiny, which is the library management program that we've been using. And I've been in charge of setting up and maintaining the database for our entire school district. But what I thought was that my other role that I've been doing and kind of where I'm seeing myself kind of going in the future is in teaching computer science. And I thought right now would be really good would be to introduce code.org to you guys, because next week is the Hour of Code week. And so it seemed like a good way to show that. So I'm just going to go share here quick. I should just share my desktop just to make it easy. Let's see, let's start with this. Is that the right one? So let me just find the right first show. Okay, so just a quick I'll just go right into it. One sec. Does everyone see the code.org thing in front of me? Okay, great. Let me just bring this full screen. All right, so code.org is a online tool that is available to teachers looking to bring coding instruction into their classroom. And what's great about it, it is completely available as a Creative Commons license. So, one of the hard things with teaching computer science is that it requires, programs, it requires computers. So if your school already has access to computers, whether in a lab or with Chromebooks, using code.org actually is a great way of bringing it in because it is available for free to teachers. So The idea with the Hour of Code program, which is coming up next week, is just trying to get as many students introduced to coding as possible throughout the country. And you can see here in the center, the Hour of Code is coming. And the great thing about Hour of Code is that it's set up to provide, at least with code.org, they have pre-made curriculums for students as young as 1st and 2nd grade and all the way up through high school. I personally use codes.org to teach the AP Computer Science Principles class. They have a full year's worth of pre-designed curriculum available that you can just quickly go in and implement all the tools, everything you need. So I just want to kind of show you some of the tools that are available here. So introducing what, is it just kind of an invitation? I'm going to go to try it. Now, what's great about code.org is that it runs a modified JavaScript language. And so what they've actually done is they have modified the language at various levels to really let you work grades 2 through 5, 6 through 8, and grades 9+. That way, each level is more applicable to the skill level of the students, and so that they're getting that computational thinking practice without having to get bogged down in heavy layers of code. And as you can see here, we have a whole bunch of different activities, and a lot of it is actually tied to popular IP like Minecraft. Now this is a grades 2+. Just to kind of show you an example. What was that?
Your screen is frozen on the first slide.
Is it? Okay, oops, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm gonna pause my sharing. Gonna do a new share. Okay, let's see. Is it what's up now? Is it the Minecraft look?
No, your main
Same screen.
screen that just says Ryan Paulson.
Okay.
Okay. Minecraft is up now.
Okay, Minecraft is up now. Sorry, I had the wrong thing going. So, sorry about that. So this is, we're gonna let's get started. I'm gonna just select the person. And so at this point, it's just very basic. And you notice that it's, this is what we refer to as a block-based coding language, where we can just drag in pieces of our code and we can quickly run programs. Yeah, so what's great about this is it allows us to quickly get into coding without having to know, say, something like the syntax, like the actual language, because it will give you specific sets of code, and you can really just kind of build from there, and you can really control what the students see. And the main thing that we look for with computer science teaching today is this idea of computational thinking skills. And the idea with computational thinking skills is we're trying to create strategies that as humans to solve problems as computers, because the way that we think as humans is based on things like experience, our senses, intuition, all of these things that computers don't really have. So as we want to try and work with computers, especially beyond end users like we currently are, where we're using a program that's created, we actually want to use our computers to solve problems for us. We have to think about how the computer actually thinks and runs to solve problems. Yeah, like I said, one of what I think is really great about this particular code.org program is that for the most part, it will run on the technology that you guys will probably already have at your schools. And, cost is a huge barrier to the implementation of computer science. Because, you need computers to run computer science. And I know that in our AP Computer Science A class here, we actually had to go out and buy specific computers to run for that class. With code.org, that is not an issue. The other thing I really like about code.org, specifically for the hour of code, is if you've noticed, I've already gone in and I'm coding, and I never put in my information. So from a teacher's perspective, code.org is great, is that, especially for code.org, it doesn't ask your students to provide any personal information. So this is a program that you can trust will protect your students' privacy, because it will never collect it in the first place. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Cool.
And I always say, thank you for reminding, I always say every year around this time for students who are taking the course in the fall, and I totally forgot this year, if you get an hour of code certificate, because at the end of this steps, hour of code allows you to enter your name and then print the certificate or PDF the certificate. You can actually feel like you are coded an hour and you've got a certificate. So it goes for all of you. So if you can, you want to go get a certificate of your own, just go to code.org. And next week is week-long activities. It's very exciting. And I actually, 10 years ago, I think that was the first time when code.org was out, I came home saying, I learned an hour of code and got a certificate. And my son in the school had the same experience. He said, oh, I got it too. So it's not that big deal.
Right. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I didn't have any background in computer science. What I know of computer science, I learned using code.org. Yeah. And I've been teaching, an AP computer science principles class for 3 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I would suggest, if you really want to learn it to like a slightly higher level, go in and actually look through the AP Computer Science Principles curriculum, because it is a very, very wide scope. And from the programming perspective, the modules that they do at that level are fantastic. So yeah, it's even, code.org is even great for professional development for yourself.
Thank you, Ryan. All right. We have tons of questions, but I guess we have some has to go to sleep, right, Iran? I want to give her a chance to speak now. So 5 minutes.
Hello again, and I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. I thought it was my turn. Okay, so here I have 2 applications for you. Firstly, so I can share my screen, I think so right now. Screen, yes. Here, yeah. So I realized that according to my observation, code is one of the most commonly used application by Turkish K-12 teachers for English language teaching. And I predict that everyone here is kind of familiar with this application. So it's basically designed to allow users create and run game like multiple choice quizzes. So it's all up to users, let's say teachers here, to use code to create their own quizzes or to find or use public quizzes available on the application. So based on my observation here in Turkey, my collaborative teacher use it as a comprehension activity. For example, they want to check whether or not their students truly understood the book that they have read, or they learn the target vocabularies after implicit interaction. So it is very friendly environment for teachers, and they can create quizzes in a little amount of time, and it's also easy for students to enter a game while using the given pin code. And if you want, you might add just, so for the questions, as you see in the second picture, you can just add symbols or just colors on the answers. That means your students need to look at the classroom screen to find the actual answers. Furthermore, there's another option for teachers to use code as a classic mode or as a team mode. So basically, you can make your students to be a part of a group and compete against the other teams. So the team mode, I think, will increase the collaboration, leadership skills, and teamwork in the classroom settings. And on the other hand, of course, they can do the quizzes individually in a given time. But so basically, the app is really convenient and accessible easily both for learners and educators. But other than the features of the application, I am really interested in the effects of using it in the EFL setting. Okay, so in the classes where I am working as a practice teacher, there are mixed ability students. So, for example, I realized that some students have high reading skills, while some of them have low reading skills. So one day when I was sitting next to one of the students, so he was just, he was like seem careless about the lesson, and he just listened to music on Spotify during the lesson, and he didn't even answer any of the questions that the teacher asked. So, and I also like known that the teacher called this student as a problematic one. So, like at the end of the lesson, the teacher gave code quiz for the students. And so everyone just entered the game using the given pin code. And so some of them also like choose the nicknames for them to enter a quiz. So like that student sitting next to me also did. He also chose himself a nickname called Buffalo One. And I was quite surprised to see that Buffalo One was incredibly fast and correct to answer the questions. So like everyone in the classroom was like, "Oh, who is that? Who is the Buffalo One?" And even the teacher was quite surprised after learning the name behind this nickname. So the app is quite fun and it motivates students. But for me, it allows silent students to speak out loud in a different way. So that students choose a nickname for himself. So I think he felt himself better because no one was going to say like, "Oh, you've chosen the wrong answer if his answer would have been wrong," but, which is a quite normal thing. But you know, in the classroom setting, students tend to label other students in a good way or a bad way. So here is the point. Code ignores all the labels that you have. You can choose your own name and you can answer the question freely without hesitations. So it's commonly used because it's good for EFL classroom settings and made up of mixed ability students, and it can work as a motivational source. And by using it, you make your students actively participate in the lessons. So when it comes to the application that I give importance the most, it's called Beyond. Actually, it was GoAnimate before, but they've changed the name as Beyond. This is a great tool to create quality videos, and if you like animations, here you can create your own animations for your learners. And here it was my first animation that I prepared for my students. It was about adaptation, and I tried to choose these characters and try to customize it to look like me. So the creating characters are really fun. So you can customize the clothes and mount eyes and anything you want. And like here is the things that I like the most about this application. It's easy to use, and like on the first slide, it's just consume a little bit of time to discover all the features, but then you can create your videos quickly. So and you can make you can even make your characters play an instrument, and you can add background music to make videos more interesting for students, especially for children. Furthermore, you can even make them speak. And here it's taken one of my animations, and while someone is raising her hand and to ask some questions, well, I use this application as a warm-up activity. So, and I realized from my experience that I always give instructions in a complicated way. Although I ask my students whether or not they have any questions about the game, they just don't ask. So I try to find a solution by using this animation. So here, someone is asking question to me like, "Teacher, can you clarify the game that you just gave instructions?" And in the second presentation, I give instructions in a simplified version. So it works perfectly well with my students. So they really like the applications. You can also add sound, and you can you can also like add your own voice, or you can use the option text to speech, and you can use voice of like Karen from the States or John from England. So there are many options for the voices too. And so like after here, like there are many settings also, as you can see. And here on the, it was like alteration animation was my first video, and after that one of my students asked that if I could also choose characters look like them, and since then I'm also doing it to enhance learning. And they like, other than talking about the alliteration and giving and making clear this topic by standing in front of the board and giving like explicit instruction, I think creating an animation sounds way better for English language teaching and learning. So yeah, that's all from me. And I think these are really good applications for creating a better environment for students.
Thank you, Ram, so much for coming and staying up for
and thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you go early, we understand, but the session will be recorded for your review later.
Right. Thank you.
Already put all his stuff, so if you can stop sharing, please.
Okay. Yeah, this one. Okay.
Am I able to pull up my
Yes, yes. So the good news is whenever this Google projects helps us to connect it very quickly. Don't worry, it always says that. A moment anyway. Okay, I don't know what's going on now that I am getting worried. It sees me, but it says I don't have an account. Okay, so I think I know the reason. Okay. Let me go to my other email. Recover. Oh, well, you know what? We have much better solutions. Sorry about that. NYIT SpeedTech.wordpress.com. It's right there, all the presenters and their presentations. Why am I trying to get into my system? Okay. So the presenters and their links. So if you want to in the future, and I'll be more than happy to put your forms with your name. All right, take it over. Do you want to be here clicking? I am so sorry.
Are our viewers able to see the screen as well? Are our Zoom
yes.
friends able to see the screen as well? Are they able to see the screen?
No, go back to Zoom. You did not say share screen.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, friends, we're going to share it. Share screen. So
Okay,
share
right here,
screen.
right?
Yep, perfect.
And then just go back to it.
No, you didn't hit the button yet.
Oh, oops.
Go back. It's a good learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'll share screen.
Yep. Now everybody could see, right?
All right. All right. Well, greetings, everybody. My name is Stephen Calix. I am an educator as well as a future counselor, thanks to NYIT. I'm in the graduate program. And a little history about myself. I am a professional creative director. I also work at the Office of Student Engagement at NYT. We help with coordinated events, marketing, and I myself have recently took on the path of pursuing to be a school counselor. And the more and more I learn about the realm of consultation, I realize that it's a very complex realm. And there are various contributing factors that make up consultation and being a school counselor. And when I received my BA at Farmingdale State College, my primary focus was psychology. And I was also working at the public schools throughout Long Island, and it helped me really, or should I say, inspire me to want to pursue the field of school counseling when I started working with the children and realizing that there are a lot of underserved communities and they're not getting the proper encouragement that they need to pursue the educational path. So my topic for today is a particular tool in school counseling that deals with encouragement and the mindset and behaviors and how to, pretty much motivate your children, students, and clients to be more confident in their path. So
push the present. I'm going to talk right over that.
Oh yes, thank you. There we go. All right, so mindset and then behaviors.
That's good.
All right. So now, do all of our students have the courage, support, and confidence needed in order to succeed? I've worked in a lot of underprivileged and minority schools where, unfortunately, they weren't getting the proper attention that they needed. I've worked in both, public and private schools, and I've seen, a lot of drastic differences. And unfortunately, a lot of the faculty members, from my personal experiences, were not fully involved in their students' realm. You know what I mean? So they weren't able to give them the proper guidance that they really required. And yes, they were fantastic educators, but a lot of these children, unfortunately, were not getting the encouragement that they needed at home. Mm-hmm. So as a school counselor, and as I work with a lot of social workers and school counselors at the schools that I work with, sitting down and speaking with them, they actually helped inspire me to learn about a lot of the tools and strategies that they use in to get their students more involved in their academic careers. So social emotional development. Standards guiding school counseling programs to help students' emotions and learn apply interpersonal skills. Now, a little funny thing is that now as school counselors, we can't take full credit in the therapeutic remedies that come into part because we serve more of like a philosophical bridge that builds the gap between problem and solution. But it's an imperative role because we provide the essential tools for them to succeed and move forward and get ahead. Now, one thing when it comes to the tool of encouragement in counseling is that you don't want to just say, oh yeah, just go ahead and do your job and then call it a day. Encouragement and building self-confidence is really getting involved with your students. These, like the teacher of the year said, students spend a great deal of time in school. It's like their second home, and their teachers are actually like their second parents. Mm-hmm. So we should actually take that into consideration and try our best to motivate because they're a reflection of us as well. So apply self-motivation and self-direction to learning. Clients develop much greater when we're able to identify what they're capable of doing rather than focusing on their flaws and disabilities. Promote their accomplishments and help them realize their goals that they're setting for themselves. So we want to develop an empathic relationship and to attempt to build a strong rapport with your students and to encourage trust with them, with yourself, and as well as with your students as well. One thing that I try to share with my colleagues is have some multicultural competence. You know what I mean? Being aware of the backgrounds and the potential social issues that may be taking place in the community that you're involved in. Help make your students feel that you're taking into consideration multicultural issues that may be taking place, and do not automatically assume anything and bring your own assumptions and biases into the sessions. Attempt to develop an awareness of what's going on, and you never want to presume that of something that's going on based off media, stereotypes, etc. Really educate yourself and get bring your awareness there. So these are some of the behavior standards according to the ASCA, the American School Counseling Association. Behavior standards, these standards include behaviors commonly associated with being a successful student. So we have learning strategies, self-management, and social skills. One of the things, like I was saying, when I was at Farmingdale, two primary, I guess, say dimensions that really inspired me, that's art and psychology. I'm a creative director professionally, and I also study in the realm of counseling and consultation. And one of the approaches that I want to do, especially when I go further for my, my doctorate, is implement art in therapy. I love art, and I see that a lot of the students, if you cannot communicate with them through just words, art is another platform that you can help, communicate with them. I'm currently working on my first graphic novel. Growing up, I loved comic books and stuff like that. Superman was my hero, Batman was my hero. And one of the projects I'm working on is called Keymaster, and it's about a young individual who, the plot of the story is that he inherits a haunted house. But, us as a, professionals and scholars, the true meaning is that the haunted house is a reflection of himself. He goes inside within himself and realizes the ghosts that are in this mansion are really a reflection of himself, and eventually he conquers it, and then he opens up the new doors to new worlds. So he has the ability to travel to new worlds. So this was just something that I developed over the years, working with students, seeing what they're into, and also a reflection of myself and what I was going through as well.
Next year, we're going to get signed copies here?
Yeah, that's the goal. Yes.
That's great.
Thank you. I'm going to show you guys just a preview. I've been working on this for quite some time. How do I go back? Zoom and unshare. Okay, stop share. So I'm going to show you guys a quick preview before I stop my presentation. Exit. All right. So, yes, the name of the story is called Keymaster. It's inspired by. Oh, yeah, I share it. Yes. Yes. Share the screen. All right, so the name of the graphic novel is called Keymaster. I've been working on this for about 3 years now.
Wow.
Because graphic novels, traditional Japanese magazines, they're black and white, and they're pretty thick books. So far, I have about 100 pages done, illustrated. It's been taking me quite some time.
Did you illustrate this?
Yes, I illustrated this.
Super impressive.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. Yes,
That
it's
is so
good.
impressive.
Thank you.
I love that.
He's gonna
It's been taking.
Now you're taking for another keynote.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's been taking some time, but I'm almost there. I'm almost there. My students, every time I show them a preview, they get super excited. They're like, "Is it done yet, Mr. Colex?" I'm like, almost. I promise. I'm working on it, but between school, work, I'm hoping by next year it will be done. In Japanese, it says Master Key. So yeah, because a lot of the kids, like I said, it's very popular right now with graphic novels, mangas, and like Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Goku made his first appearance at the Macy's Thanksgiving parade, which is a Japanese super. He's like the equivalent of Superman in Japan, and he made it over here to the U.S. So graphic novels is a big thing, and I saw that maybe if I could communicate with my students through graphic novels, I can communicate, get them. So.
Amazing.
And that is about it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wow.
And stop share. And that is it.
Thank you.
I wanted to just,
Oh, of
I had a
course.
couple of thoughts while you were speaking. When you talked about becoming culturally aware, there's a thing called culture grants.
Okay.
The university, out west, in the Mormon community, Brigham Young University, they put out culture grants. You used to be able to get them individually as an individual. Now you can only do it through an institution. But the thing about that is, if you know your student population, you can go and just pick what cultures and you will get all the information that's updated constantly about those different cultures. So they're called culturegrams, and it's Brigham Young University. The last I looked, I used to use that. The other thing is art therapy is a really important thing. I agree with you. I have a friend, a very dear friend of mine, who's an New York State certified art therapist, and she works in upstate New York with veterans using art therapy to help them get past their PTSD. And the other business of you mentioned about looking at the problems that kids have. That's called the deficit model of teaching. The current thinking among academia and some teachers is to start with what kids bring to the table. What are they bringing first? And then never mind what they don't have. Talk about what they have and have them contribute. What do they have? And you mentioned about parents, teachers. Well, there is a thing called in loco parentis. You know what it is?
No.
It means Latin, and it's you look it up on the internet. In loco parentis, meaning teachers are in place of parents at school, and that is actually, I think it's a law.
Wow.
And so it used to be that, years ago, decades, I don't know, 100 years ago, I don't know, that physical punishment, corporate punishment, all of those kind of things, corporal punishment was allowed in schools. And it was because that's what parents did at home. So the teachers were twice the parents when the kids were in school. Now, a lot of rules and regulations centuries ago, and in the 18th and 19th centuries, were based on this idea. And so if you look at a lot of the problems we have in school, with understanding children and the position of teachers and parents, all that mixed up, goes back to this, and this not being clearly delineated and changed to meet modern times.
Thank you so much. And we have 3 more presenters waiting, 4 more presenters waiting to be, and we have running with time. So really 5 minutes coming up. Who has to go rush first? Who's rushing?
We can't hear them.
Donald, are you rushing?
A little bit. I need to be out by 5. But
Minutes. Go.
I can do 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
I just need to share.
Next presenter, Donald, and who's going to be next? We have Rob, Melissa. No, Melissa is going to be next. Okay, good.
All right. So you should be looking at my screen now?
Oh, you have to share your screen.
I did, actually. Well, hang on.
Try one more time.
Hang on. I shared it. Screen. Share.
And then you need to hit, yep, it's right there. Coming up.
Okay, right? Let me get the present button here.
All right, it's all yours.
No, that's not what I want.
No problem. Take your time.
Yeah, the little window's in my way. That's all. Okay, you got it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I want to talk to everybody about today is just sort of a little case study that I did. I was working on a business statistics class, so math type stuff, and we were using an online homework system. So the students could get immediate feedback. It would give them the answer. And it's nice because they use an algorithm based, so the students can do the question multiple times. It changes the numbers every time they do the question. The problem was all the questions were from the publisher, and if you didn't like the question, you couldn't write your own because of this algorithm based thing. So I started writing my own questions in our own learning management system, which is, we use Blackboard, just like we use here at NYIT. And what I found was if I write my own questions, I can set it so the students can take the question as many times as they want. But when you write your own, the numbers don't change, right? So how do you get around that? So what I started doing is writing multiple sets of questions. And then what I would tell the students is, well, you can do this set A, and if you didn't get a good score, you can try set B, and then you can try set C. And I'll show you really quick here. If you look at this top model here, so they would have a practice homework, and then a graded homework, and another graded homework, and then finally a quiz. And the idea was the practice homework wasn't graded, so they could do that as many times as they wanted to, and until they were comfortable doing material. And then they would go on to this homework B, which is graded, and then they would have another chance with this homework C, and then they would finally take the quiz. What I found out about this, and it worked really well, by the way, what I did was I set Blackboard so that it would only count the higher of the 2 grades on the graded homework. Okay, so there was no penalty to the students if they, if they got an 80 and they wanted to try the next one, they weren't afraid of getting a 70 because it would count the higher grade. Okay, but what I found out was it sort of inadvertently created self-differentiation among the students. So what happens is the students then realize, well, if I already know the material, I can skip the practice homework, which you'll see on the bottom line here, go right to the graded homework. If I get 100 on that graded homework, there's no reason for me to do the next graded homework. I can go right to the quiz. So the students who were excelling at the material were able to streamline, and they weren't bogged down with doing busy work, doing problem after problem when they've already kind of got the solution. And the students who needed more help could go through the whole, top row here. What was really neat about it was that it modified with each unit we covered. So in one unit, a student might take the streamline model because they know that material. The next unit we covered, they might go back to this extra help model. And they also, there's a third model which isn't even in here. Some students would think that they know the material, jump right to the graded homework, and then get a really low grade, like a 50 or a 60. They could then go back and follow the top model, do the practice homework until they get it, and then jump to the second graded homework. So I call this a low-tech, high-tech solution because you don't need any fancy algorithm or any machine learning or anything like that. You just write a bunch of questions, but the way you present it to the student creates this differentiated model, and it's self-differentiation. You don't have to even really track the student. You only have to help them when they get stuck. And so this was, and this has actually been used this semester. I implemented it in a fully online course. So the students are essentially going through the material on their own with this. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Every day we can live and learn. This is an amazing opportunity.
So any questions on that? And I'm going to get to here. This will open up.
Very inspired.
I might email you with questions, Donald.
Okay, now I got to get this to reopen so I can unshare it. Okay.
Thank you. So our next presenter is another gold mine of ours, and when she's the one like, aren't you going to get us into? I'm like, I know, it's my tenure portfolio. So I really apologize for my lack of coherent work this time around because of the tomorrow is my deadline for my portfolio.
Oh my God, and you had SpeedTech today?
Yeah.
On purpose?
Yeah, I did it on purpose.
Did you use a bat or something? Wow.
Yeah.
That's another day.
So I really apologize. And also I've been apologetic to my students for all the time. I'm so sorry, I haven't had a chance to finish the grading yet. So everything is waiting for me to get this out of the way. All right, Melissa, it's all yours. And thank you, Donna.
Thanks, Donald.
You want to come here and click?
Oh yeah.
Or do this
I
one?
could take them out.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Okay, and I will promise to be quick as well. All right, so my presentation is on the use of Google Drive in the ESL classroom. And I've been teaching in the ESL field for about 10 years now. So, you know, I have a lot of different experience, and I've been working here at NYIT for about 3.5 years. And so when I came here, I really got heavy using Google Drive for pretty much every aspect of my class. In a sense of like maybe going green, I really don't have too many paper copies. I don't really use textbooks as much anymore because I put everything on the drive. Okay, you guys can read that later on. Okay, so as you can see here, I basically have an e-portfolio for each student in my classroom, and it helps the students to stay organized, and it helps me to be able to find their work very easily and to monitor their progress from the beginning of the semester to the end. So each student has a portfolio. The portfolio is shared with me only. And the reason for that is that I don't really want other students going into each other's portfolios and trying to copy, because you know that they like to do that. So I'm the only one who has access to the files that are in their portfolios. Okay, and as an ESL teacher, I constantly have to give feedback to students. Why? Because my job is to help them to improve their language skills. So when I am using, if it's Google Docs, hello, who's here? When I'm using Google Docs, for example, I give the students feedback right in the document. Oh, are you gonna? Okay. Needed her. Okay. There you go. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it doesn't give you the option because it has to be your other computer?
She needs to do it on her end.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Okay. So, back to where I was. Okay. So I give feedback right in the document, and the students are able to fix their errors in that document as well. If they're doing something from home, then they can write back to me, so they can reply to the comment that I made, and then I have the option of replying to them directly, or maybe just the rest of the thing in class, because maybe it's something that everybody's confused about. So the students really like this because they don't have to retype their essays. They can just fix it right there. And Google Drive will save all of the edits that they made, so I can go back and take a look and to see, you know, what I wrote and what they did to fix their mistakes. Okay, I do a lot of collaborative activities with Google Drive because we have that share option. So I have them do pair work or group work activities, and I also have a heavy emphasis on them doing peer feedback to each other on their essays. So before I go in and take a look at what they have written, I usually let them work with a partner to, you know, see what was written and to help them fix the mistakes before I go in to really, you know, dive in and help them to make them better. So I really love doing these types of activities, and I think it works really well for them. When I teach, every single class I take, you know, I'm putting notes up on the board, and all of my notes are in a shared class folder, and the students all have access to the folder. It's a view only so that they can't start pulling documents out. If I record myself giving some kind of a lesson, if I give any activities or the class notes, everything is in there for them. And so when they're absent, there's no excuse why they can't do the homework or class activities or to follow what I'm doing, because they're able to do so from home. And so it's a great feature. And okay, and my last bit here I'm going to talk about are personal websites. So I teach some of the graduate students the advanced ESL classes, and I noticed that, you know, a lot of them don't have any kind of portfolio set up for themselves. They're going to be applying for jobs in, you know, maybe a year or so. And I have computer science majors, and they don't even have a personal website for themselves to display some of their work or to talk about themselves. So I teach one class that's called Technical English. And in that class, one of the projects I had them working on was to make their own websites using Google Sites. And they have to have a homepage, a bio, skills, resume, hobbies, photos. And part of my job as an ESL teacher, let's say they write their bio, I have to go in and I'll help them to edit the English just to make it a little bit better. But I encourage them to be creative, to demonstrate their culture. That's a big thing for me, that, they come from all over the world. My students are mostly from China, India, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Jordan. I have students from everywhere. So I want them to exhibit their culture on their pages and their hobbies, their interests, and things like that. And to also highlight some of their skills. Some of them speak multiple languages, so to highlight that for when they're job hunting. Some of their technical skills. Oh, no, wait, what just happened? Uh-oh. Oh, you lost Zoom. How did we lose Zoom?
I don't think we lost it.
Yeah,
It's still there, right?
hello, can you hear us?
Maybe somebody set up.
I can still hear you.
It's
Oh,
just
can you see
I
us?
hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe because it went to a Google site.
maybe it's too fancy.
Okay, all right. Okay, what we'll do is I'll X out of that and you can look at those later. They're on here. And all of the students did sign media consent forms, so I did have permission for me to include those in the presentation. So you can take a look at those later. And if you have any questions, you can email me or give me a call.
Really amazing.
Okay,
Impressive work.
we have,
Don't worry.
I broke something.
No, you didn't. Nothing.
Oh, there we go.
go.
Okay, okay.
It just needed my magic. Question.
Yeah.
On the personal website.
Yes.
So
I'm
just curious to know the question. Rob, are you ready for next?
Yeah, Rob is here, ready for it.
Okay, so we'll have a question on the table. I'm just curious to know the use of personal websites that you're helping your students create themselves. Have you done any research on how well those serve people looking for jobs? And in what areas are they most appropriate for?
So the students that I have, a lot of them are in engineering, computer science. I have a few communication arts and a few for business. But the class that I'm teaching is for mostly engineering and computer science students. So a lot of the times they don't have anything to showcase some of their work that they do. They have projects that they do in their major classes, and it should all be in some type of portfolio.
But how is it received at the other end? In other words, if they're actually applying for a job.
So when you apply for jobs, they often ask for a hyperlink to your personal website. And
that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, they don't have one.
Especially engineering.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah.
When I give
major,
them
I think
personal
this is
website,
so
I don't
interesting.
have a personal website, but I give them the link to my LinkedIn
Yeah.
as a substitute.
I'm very bad at this. I have absolutely no skills at all.
Do you need help making?
I always, I am a mess.
All right, Rob.
No, anything.
Okay,
Take over.
Okay. Hi, Rob. Sorry.
no problem. I'm just gonna get this right. Share. Let's see.
And doggies are in the cage?
Can everybody see me?
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Let's see the presentation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very brief with this. My interest was Adobe Captivate 9, which came across several of my courses during the instructional technology program. Seems to be a very valuable tool for multimedia. So let's get started. Overview has been an authoring tool that is used for creative e-learning content, such as software demonstrations, software simulations, branch scenarios, and randomized quizzes in small formats and HTML formats. It can also convert Adobe Captivate generated file formats, such as to digital, MP4 formats, and it can also convert PowerPoint formats as well, but there's a difficulty with it. Anything that's above Microsoft Office 10 and above, it will not convert right now. Perhaps that new release that came out in August, I have to see if they can take care of the job for that. The history of it, Adobe Captivate's been around since 2002 under a different name. The first name was Robo Demo 2, which lasted until Demo Remo 5. And then right now it's Adobe Captivate 9 still with the August 2018 release, which is for 2019. Notable improvements. Adobe Captivate 9 includes multi-state objects, improved effect, motion paths, creating a content draft on an iOS device, the Mac, and publishing to the new Adobe LMS known as Adobe Captivate Prime. It adds integration of e-learning, brothers templates. Okay, let's go to pros and cons. The pros: familiar platform, is pretty intuitive, user-friendly. For the cons, games and quizzes and tests are limited with little space for customization. Performance can be a bit sluggish if there's too much material. Again, unable to convert PowerPoint files from Microsoft Office 10 and above. Let's see. I want to show a project if I can have time for it. One second. Where did it go? This is a project I did for EDTR 668. So I'm just going to go to publish. Under the publish, it allows you to view it, does a conversion.
Rob, while this is loading real quick, is this for Adobe, Mac and PC?
No, this is just Mac.
Oh, just Mac.
Correct.
Usually just PC. There you go. That's one way to solve the problem. What's it about?
Sorry for delay. Okay, here we go to view the output. I added music to the background. Where are we at? Here we go.
It'll come out.
All right. Slides I made. Here are the lessons 1 through 6 with an assignment, with an assessment at the end.
Your screen, I think, is frozen.
Can you see?
It should be open in a browser, maybe.
Yeah, because
you have to share the browser.
You have to share the browser.
Let me go back to the main menu.
let's share the.
And I go to the assessment.
Sorry, we can't see it.
It just gives you questions, which would be all of these.
Rob, we cannot see your screen. We only see the PowerPoint.
Oops.
It's not frozen. Yeah, it's just frozen.
Okay, reshare.
Try again.
Yeah, reshare, please.
Professor?
Yes, my dear.
Yeah, no, I stopped it.
Now you can share again.
Okay.
I think it was frozen earlier
Okay.
on the PowerPoint slide. When everybody's watching it. Okay. Now we're in PowerPoint.
No, we're not. Adobe Captivate. So
Oh, yeah.
Captivate, yeah.
And
we already did that publish.
Yep, I think it's frozen on my side.
Okay, so maybe the software itself is so
probably because he's on Zoom. Because I feel like Adobe Captivate likes to be by itself and nothing else running in the background, so that might be why.
I think there's a conflicting software using the RAM port. So we're assuming it's working somewhere at some time. But why don't you go through the slides?
Yeah, we can see from here.
Yeah, why don't you, we kind of use the imagination.
Okay. Well, I covered all the slides. The thing was, I wanted to show how the project potential output looked.
It's on Zoom page right now. Thank you, Donald. Goodbye. Iram, why don't you go to sleep yet? She's like, I'm so excited.
I'm still here and I'm listening to you.
Well, Professor, no, that's gonna the conflict with the software or whatever's making it freeze will not permit me to go any further right now.
Sorry about that, but we have last but not least, of course, the presenter getting ready. So if you can do maybe screencast of what you've done and post it, I will share it with everyone.
I'll go. Yeah.
Yes, I will.
We're all interested in seeing.
Yeah.
But by the time the system is working, I think it's better to use screencast as a storyline. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you much.
Take away. Oh my God. You weren't getting to skip it. You can't get away.
She needs help setting up.
Hi, Diane. What's the matter?
She's been working on this slideshow for like 2 minutes.
I'll be 2 minutes, I promise.
No 2 minutes. So her presentation is also very important because I specifically asked her to present about this.
Yeah.
She was in a panel 2 weeks ago with us, and she mentioned that things happen in California drying, and there is a reason that was predicted by the scientists before. So she needs to tell us. She needs to tell us in detail. I am not sure.
Oh my God.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay. So really quickly, I'm currently the Science Technology Entry Program, but in a previous life, I was a chemical oceanographer. So long story short, I'm a global environmental scientist and have done many projects out of Stony Brook around the world doing global things. And Melda and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, last month, about things that happened decades ago. And it was about geocaching, and it was about Turkey and how Turkey dammed the Tigris and Euphrates, starting the, Austin, stay there and click the thing, please, please. Pretty please, Mr. Gonzalez. So how you can click it to the front page. How when Turkey dammed the Tigris and Euphrates and they got all this beautiful arable land, it created the drought in Syria and Iraq, and it caused the civil war, etc. So things that happened 30 years ago create crises that we have now. And what we were talking about in the panel discussion, of course, California is burning on fire, paradise burned to the ground, so many lives lost, and tweets from our fearless leader, I'll leave it, about, mismanagement, 3 days ago is what caused it. And I, off the cuff, mentioned that 20 years ago, we were doing research on carbon particulates coming over from China when China was changing their economy and China was trying to grow their economy. How it was drying out land in California. So when she asked me to do SpeedTech, I said I would show up, but I wouldn't do anything. And then she insisted that I tell you this. So in 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you what we were questioning 20 years ago and how it was drying out. So hang on for the ride, guys. I'll speak very quickly, and then you can ask me any questions. So next slide. So China's burgeoning economy, if you remember, from your high school things, the communist revolution, they were all farmers and living in rural things. Deng Xiaoping, in his pursuit for a high growth economy, if you look, really wanted to build the economy for market growth and compete in worldwide things. Many of the agricultural and rural farmers moved into the urban areas and started manufacturing. The goal was to have this huge population in China be the manufacturer to the world. And if you think about it now, it is the manufacturer to the world. Yes. So this was happening from the 60s to the 70s when, you know, I believe there are 2 of us in this room that were alive back then. Mm-hmm. So what they needed to do was build the infrastructure in order to get all these people living in the city. What did they have to do? They had to power the infrastructure. Next slide. So what they were doing was they were building coal-burning power plants because there was a lot of coal in China, and that you can do that. And essentially, in order to get all of this urban infrastructure, to get these people moving from the agricultural thing, they were opening up a coal-burning power plant a week, but they were still very secretive about what they were doing. So next slide.
Was that when they were doing that? Was that the 1960s?
There was the 60s to the 70s, and you saw the big jump in it, right? And then the 70s to the 80s is when everybody's like, oh, China's open. Remember Nixon went into China, opened up China, and everybody's like, let's buy Chinese stuff because we can buy it for $1. Right. So back in World War II, just to give everybody a quick background, Japan knew that the way that the winds worked, for those of you on Zoom, you can't see, but the left-hand slide shows that the winds go from the Western Pacific to the Eastern Pacific to California. And what they had done was they made these balloons, like you see now on the great balloon races. They were a little bit more sturdy than that, and they had bombs on them. So they would release them in Japan silently. They would go over by the winds, and they would go down on Western California, and they would just quietly, silently bomb parts of the Western United States. What was in them? So bombs, regular bombs in the thing. Many of them, some of us did, but yeah, we never learned about it because when we were going to school, it was all about the Cold War and how Russia was going to blow us up, right? And I tried to explain to my kids that we had more air raid drills than we did fire drills, and people didn't understand that. So anyway, so this was it. So I take today the pollution particulates that we actually look at via satellite, and you could see that we can measure the pollution and how it goes across the Pacific up on the north around, but it still goes across to California. So let's go back 20 years ago, thanks to what we're talking about. So how we measured the particulates and how we knew whether it was coming from China or not, because California was going through a drought when it shouldn't have. California was also using an excess amount of water because avocados were becoming popular. If you remember, all of a sudden everybody's natural. All of a sudden almond milk comes on the market, right? So those are very, very heavy water needing crops. And the way that the Western water laws are used is the first one that gets there and signs up for the water use gets to use as much as it wants. And then like a waterfall, the second guy that signs up for it gets to use as much as he wants. And then when he's finished with it, the third guy gets to use it. So the first guy that signs up, these farmers, get to use as much as they want and suck as much as out of the groundwater as they possibly can. And so what happens is they're sucking all the water out of the ground to build up all of these avocado groves, all of these almond milk groves. Think about it. When you were a kid, did anybody drink almond milk, right? No. So this is all happening. The weather patterns are changing, and the actual air is drying with particulates. So we're taking the study to do this because coal around the world has its own signature. You can figure out where it is. And I use the example of Wisconsin. Coal is kind of where they get this clean coal thing. Coal from Wisconsin is the cleanest coal raw in the world because it has the least amount of sulfur dioxide in it. And what clean coal is supposed to be is where they strip it of sulfur dioxide before they burn it. Now, coal also has a lot of other disgusting things in it, and actually stripping it of sulfur dioxide is a disgusting, filthy process anyway. There is no clean coal in this world, so don't believe what they say. So anyway, so the California drought with the almonds and avocados with the farmers still saying we're fine and still growing and using all the water. The air is drying out. And what happens is California starts to burn. So instead of they have that dry season, they have the Santa Ana winds and a couple of thousand acres burn each year it gets worse. And we were studying this 20 years ago. And now you have where most of the state is on fire. And these fires are so hot, like in paradise. When you look, you'll see that it looks white as if snow is on there. And it has burned so hot that the soil itself has turned white, like porcelain and pottery turns white. So next slide. So what I did was this hyperlink, if you could do it, but just to quickly explain. So what they have now in Beijing, and if there's a way, I think the Zoom people can see this whole slide, but the people in here can't. And oh my God, do not go in front of that camera again, showing my huge belly. Can you move the Zoom pictures so that people can go on? So this is the air quality index for China. And so the air quality index they have now, because the particulates are so bad from everybody burning coal around the world, and because of all the carbon that's in the air from the forest fires and from what's going on. So good is like 0 to 50 in these particulates. And so they have these colors so you can see it easily. And there's actually an app on your phone where you can hold it up and you can do this. So if I go in the middle of Eisenhower Park, it will be green and it will be about 5 particulate, right? 0 to 50 is green. So what I want you to take a peek real quick, a good visual, most of the United States is green or yellow to moderate. And then Western Europe is green and yellow to moderate. But Asia and China is red and purple. And now California is red and purple. Can you get this hyperlink? So with this hyperlink, I put it to Beijing, and all the news you talk about how Beijing, they've built up all of these cities and they have playgrounds where people do it. So this is Beijing, the city.
Can everybody see it on Zoom, the website?
So far.
Okay, so if you notice, there isn't one green, yellow, or anything. Everything is red, which means unhealthy. The particulates are 168. Here's 223, and this is still in the city. So the air quality index, the particulate matter is 223. And maybe if you scroll down a little bit, this way, on the main part, it will give you the air quality. Well, I thought maybe. Oh, yes. So 223, unhealthy. Everyone may begin to experience health effects. So it's not just sensitive things. Active children and adults, asthma, prolonged outdoor exertion, etc. So what China has done is built up all of these amazing cities with all of these apartments and all of these skyscrapers. And they're like ghost towns because nobody can go outside. And what they have is shops, and they have bad things. And as you can see, dark red, purple, etc.
Now we're getting it all over here.
Well, California.
Well, it's going to move.
Has it, and California is red because most of the state is on fire. Yeah. And so the trees have burned and released all the carbon, right? So it's not the coal, it's the carbon from the forests on fire.
You know, one of the things with the kids in school, when we talk about the kids, they have this thing where they talk about what they can do to change the environment, especially in the science class. You know, they all know the environment. I try to give them examples of how we are all connected. What happens over there comes over here.
Oh, absolutely.
We're not just isolated here. We have trade winds that come across. We have, we have tides, what do you call those?
A perfect example is marine debris.
Yeah.
The ocean is 70% of the world. If you take a chance and do the Saitarian River in Indonesia, is the most polluted, you know, if you could Google it, it's the most polluted river in the world. And it's like solid. You could walk across it. There's so much plastic on it. Nothing is living in there. See, good. Where was that? You can use the AQI, the air quality index, and go anywhere around the world if you're like bored one day. So just Google the marine debris, Cytarian River, whatever. But no, you could stop sharing because it's 20 after 5 and everybody wants to go home.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for these amazing array of stories, presentations, perspectives, and insight. I cannot believe I am so thrilled to learn all of you and all these amazing projects you're doing. But as I said, Diane, you really inspired me to think science, because I think not just technology. I think we need to keep learning science, and technology is a tool to learn science. So SpeedTech is bringing all these educators to continue to open more dialogues and learn from each other. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Anything I can do for these presenters, you are my connectedness for life. As Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson says, we're all connected to each other biologically, to Earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically. As a technology professor, I will add with LinkedIn, Twitter, WhatsApp, Instagram, and other social media electronically. Stay connected, stay happy and healthy. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.